We're recording. All right, I wanted to start with James 3:13 through 18 to discuss again the wisdom. Remember, we talked last time about the wisdom that Adam and Eve were tempted into, to be basically to be wise in their own eyes, to steal, not a wisdom that had something to give them. It wasn't life imparting. It was actually deceptive and death imparting to them. But we today live in a world full of different ideas on what makes life worth living and what's a wise thing to do, what's not. And so I thought it would be good to look at James. A poverty of spirit is the beatitude we're looking at. And what I want to emphasize as well is all of these beatitudes, starting with poverty of spirit, lead us to God. Anything that leads us to Him, leads us to Jesus, is a good thing. And you will see that continually. Poverty of spirit means I'm poor. I need God. I don't need a tree that has fruit on it so I can just do it all myself. I need the one who loves me, the one who gives me life, the one who is good. So let's contrast the two different kinds of wisdom as James talks about them. And he says, who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show it by his good life, by deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom. So there's a conspicuous lack of words in this. Have you noticed? Meaning, I don't mean that James isn't using many words. He just isn't telling us to use words to express our wisdom here, right? That's a real hard one for me because I always know what other people ought to do, don't you? And so I want to tell them. I want to tell them how to think. I want to tell them, my perspective so they'll adopt it and their life will go better. Or mine will. Somebody's will. But here you see a wise life is characterized by how you're living, what you're doing, and again, humility that comes from wisdom. We'll talk about humility as in terms of meekness, but I want to talk about what is instead of this. These are the things that trip us up when it comes to even having poverty of spirit, even realizing we don't know even what we should do, much less what everyone else should do. And that's the next, I have to pop this. The next verse is James chapter 3, verses 14 through 16. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. I just want to talk about that verse for a second. What do you, this is an obvious question, but we can elaborate it. What, James isn't saying if you all of a sudden decide, hey, I want to find out what bitter envy and selfish ambition are. I want to find out what it's like to be envious and bitter. I want to discover selfish ambition because you know what? I just don't have enough envy in my life, and I'm certainly not selfishly ambitious enough, right? Mm-hmm. James isn't saying if you choose these things. He's saying if you harbor them. So if you're harboring bitter envy and selfish ambition, what do you think of when you think of harboring?
Letting it hide there, keeping it close to your heart.
Yeah.
Giving it a home.
Right.
Beautiful ship that comes in.
Yeah, give it a nice, safe place to thrive. Mm-hmm. Not only be safe, but fix everything up and thrive. And it isn't actually till like right now that I'm thinking, don't boast about it or deny the truth. I never saw those as opposites before. I was always confused by that. But he's saying when it comes to the bitter envy that we're not to harbor, we're neither to boast about it which is easy to do. We can mask bitter envy and selfish ambition quite easily. I remember seeing, I don't know if you're familiar with Peculiar People, but Charlie and Ruth did a great one on, Ruth was really funny because she was sharing prayer requests, which basically was bitter envy and selfish ambition. You know, she just cloaked it in prayer requests. I remember once I went to this church, and I was friends with Rosemary Miller at the time, and Jack had written the book, I still am, but at the time, Jack had written the book, Outgrowing the Ingrown Church. And I went to this huge church, and it was so mechanized to me, and the smiles just looked pasted to me personally. And I remember telling Rosemary that this was definitely one of the most ingrown churches I had seen. It was like its own clique kind of thing, and I thought that was sort of a spiritual insight. And Rosemary told me, you know, Sue, when I have a critical spirit, I find, what did she say, Psalm 51, quite helpful. You know, so on the one hand, you can boast about it because, you know, bitter envy is just chopping that person down who has what you want. It's an easy thing to do. They don't deserve to be there. I do. You see? Because I know their character flaws. You know, they're just not. They don't have enough faith to be there. They don't have enough leadership ability. You know, all the things that you can do to say that person shouldn't be in that position. You can boast about it because you don't see it as bitter envy. You're boasting about this wonderful quality you have of assessing other people. But selfish ambition, holy cow. Have you ever tried to live without that one? And selfish ambition is, for me, it's the projected me I have in my mind that I'm going to be someday. Do you have one of those? Don't you have the image of the you wish you were?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that's the one Jesus gave you. Probably not, because he goes for the losers. He goes for the people who need him, that lose things once a day, and all sorts of, you know. When we have an image of what we want to be that is adorable, not like cute like a baby, but worth adoring, you know, that's being wise and like God. You see, so many people really want the qualities of God, and they're frustrated they don't have them. You know, again, I mentioned that last time. If you could get the gift of patience in a moment, would you take it? That's the sin that sunk the human race, because it's simply a selfishly ambitious desire. Do you see that? So on the one hand, you can boast about these things as if these things are good traits. All I want to do is be like Jesus. I used to be terribly frustrated when my children were young because I really wanted to be a godly wife and a godly mother. But who could be a godly wife with that husband of mine, and who could be a godly mother with those children of mine? You see? And, I mean, really, that's probably where I began to understand the Bible, the gospel the most. Because if my husband and my children are the enemies because I don't look good, you see, I want to attain something, and they're getting in my way. I have this idea of what our family's supposed to look like, and you're messing it up. And really, one of the greatest gifts God's given me, which is part of the wisdom, is just to take everybody where they are. We are who we are. We just are the people we are. And I can't control them anymore. But anyway, I don't want to go off on a rabbit trail. So I can boast about it, or I can deny the truth, which I hope I wasn't just doing. It's not like I don't understand bitter envy or selfish ambition. Do you see? When you deny it, you just pretend you don't have these struggles.
Right.
Yeah, I'm holy. I'm a Christian. You know, I've walked with Jesus for years. You know, I don't have these sins anymore. I'm never envious, and never ever have a selfish thought at all. Don't you want to be closer to me now? Doesn't that make you feel fellowship with me?
Wonderful.
You know, I remember. I think it was Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, "Bible tells us to confess our sins to one another and pray for one another, and we'll be healed. But we confess our sinlessness, our greatness to each other, and nobody's healed. Our perfections, and nobody's healed. And then our goal is always to try to be perfect. But healing doesn't take place there. It takes place when we're honest. And we let Jesus, that's poverty of spirit. She's, I'm coming to you because I don't know what wisdom is. I just know the way I've been living life isn't working, and I think you have better news. Help me pay attention. Sometimes I've even just prayed, Jesus, what would you tell me if I would just listen? Help me to listen. These are things that can come with poverty of spirit. So any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think it's true. Yeah.
You think it's true? What
That
part?
we do try to hide it. That we do try to, harbor these things in our hearts, and then deny it.
Right. I hadn't said it that way, but that's really true. You're harboring it and then pretending it's not there, which is hypocrisy. And the worst hypocrisy really is when we deceive ourselves.
It's harder for me to see what it really means by boasting about it.
I think boasting about it is acting like it's a good thing. I'm not going to say bitter envy is a good thing, but I will boast about bitter, envious attitudes and call them spiritual. Do you see?
Mm-hmm.
Christians need to speak their mind, which is different from confessing your sins. It's it's either treating it as a sin everybody has, so what difference does it make? I'm just being real. I'm being authentic. At least I'm honest about it.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's acting as if it's a sort of a spiritual gift. I know these people, and they shouldn't be where they are. That's the bitter envy. I'm better than them. I wouldn't say that, but I would.
Yeah, that's discernment. Right? The gift
Yes,
of discernment.
discernment. Right. I have, and selfish ambition is just everybody following Jesus the way I think they should. Not the way he thinks they should, but the way I think they should. Because I think having a daughter's been the best gift for me. I know that because before I just had sons, and they didn't tell me anything other than data, statistics, things like that. But Anne was like telling me how I'm coming across to her, and when I stop and think about it, I remember she was really young once, and she needed to do a chore, and I was kind of making it into a joke. And she's like first grade, second grade. She goes, Mom, I know you're trying to do the right thing. You're trying to be funny, so I want to do this more, but it is not helping.
Oh my. First grader.
Yeah, but she wasn't rude. She was just like, she was almost having pity on me. I know you're so trying to be what you think you're supposed to be, but could you please stop being that because it's driving me crazy. That's not a bad thing to know, is it?
Yeah.
Unless I really feel like my way's the only way, and her job is to like it. You see? But she's giving me a good gift there. She's done that quite a lot. But it's because she loves me. It's always been. Well, I don't want to make it sound like we ride off into the sunset. We can pick at each other and but it's a good thing. We both know that we're glad that we're in each other's lives. But next, let's see. Such wisdom does not come down from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, of the devil. I think it's good for us just to realize that. I've heard this joke one time. This guy was stranded on a desert island for like 15 years, and when a ship finally came to the island to rescue him, I mean, it happened to come upon him, he was showing them all the different buildings, and he had constructed 2 churches on the beach. And he said, this is a church, I went to it first. But I quit that church and went to the other one. What are the things that divide us? You know, honestly, if we're paying attention to what God says, what's dividing us is, well, a lot of it's pride, but it's envy, bitter envy, selfish ambition. I know what the church is supposed to look like. I know everything the church is supposed to be doing, and then since they're not doing it, now that's different from needing repentance, but that kind of stuff comes with humility and tears, not pride. Do you see? And how do you know if envy and selfish ambition are at work? You find disorder and every evil practice. I'm not saying we can't have differences. Of course we do. Do you understand? But it's a sad thing that we as a church are known. I don't know how bitter envy fits in. I think we do that sometimes ourselves with each other. But I'm around a lot of people. I'm in a 12-step group for Al-Anon. It has to do with my past, not anybody present. But the reason that they say trust in a higher power, did you know that the reason they call it a higher power instead of God or Jesus is because too many people have been traumatized in that name? And so they can't use that name. And although the program is very biblical in its dependence and humility and honesty. But anyway, I don't want to go off on that. I'm just saying that this is how you know that you have envy and selfish ambition, disorder, and every evil practice. Okay? Paul knows they're going to be in us. They're still here, but Jesus has died. And he's raised from the dead. And because of that, we have the forgiveness of God, his righteousness, we're clothed in it. We are loved by God all the time. All the time. It's not a doctrine. It's to get up in the morning and to know, after I get used to my, first 5 minutes grumpiness or whatever, he's not mad at me. He's not frustrated with me. Steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They're new every morning. So I have the love, and I have the very Spirit of God in my heart, so that I can stop harboring these things as if I'm going to die if I lose them, or stop hating myself because they're still there. Do you see? I don't have to deny it because I can't handle the truth, and I don't have to harbor it because I don't have to live out of this stuff. I can let go. I can be content where God has me and know that where he has me is a whole lot better than where my selfish ambition would take me by miles. And then, if we want to know what this is a thing, I am discovering in this past couple years, really since I've been doing the Monday Shorts, if they haven't changed anybody else, they've really changed me, that he loves us like that, that he loves us this much. So if we want to know what God's like, well, let's find out what his wisdom is like. Okay, the wisdom that comes down from heaven is pure. I mean, that word can have negative connotations for me, because there's been this purity idea, which means you don't date or something. You don't use certain words and you don't touch certain things, and that sort of external purity. But what it means, pure just means I'm not hiding something. I'm not hiding when it comes from God, it means that there's no secrets here that we have to be afraid of. When we misunderstand his wrath, which we'll be talking about as soon as we get to morning, we can think that God, we want to get him on a good day because he seems to have a pretty bad temper on a bad day. People sort of think that about the Old Testament and all this wrath stuff, when they're not really listening to an anger that comes from bribery and the way we treat widows and orphans. Is everybody okay? Yeah, okay. So it's pure. I like it. It says, there's a proverb that talks about a man's heart, something like is like deep waters, but the fountain of wisdom is a bubbling brook. And I love that image, especially here, Carol, in the mountains, where we have so much of these clean brooks just bubbling. You can see the stones underneath. What's there you see. It's not, like our lake, you can't see underneath it that well. And when you go in, sometimes there's leeches. Sometimes there's weeds down there. We don't know what's down there, but God's like a bubbling brook. There's no secret. I've lived a lot of time worrying that when I see Jesus face to face, that there's going to be something he's held against me, something I just didn't do enough of. I trust. You can trust him. I have loved you with an everlasting love. I've made atonement for you. You have my righteousness, a righteousness from faith. I will never leave you or forsake you. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. It's pure. Doesn't mean too holy to touch. We use that word scary. No, it means you don't have to be scared. Do you see? There's not a hidden agenda. Any questions on that?
No, I like that.
Yeah, me too.
Hidden agenda.
And peace loving. I think, you can see where bitter envy and selfish ambition would destroy peace loving. I just think that's so often where we get it wrong, because we think we're right. We have the right doctrine. We know the right truths about God. We're doing Christianity right. Therefore, your job is to get with the program like I have. That is not love, and that is not peace loving. You see? Now, even if we're peace loving, that doesn't mean that we're capitulating all the time, or because Jesus didn't do that. In fact, Jesus said he came to bring a sword, but he didn't bring the selfish ambition envy sword. It's not an ego problem. It's just the problem of, I know for me, I've had a lot of problems because I even within my family, when I began to tell the truth as I saw it, not to dominate, but just to tell the truth, it can bring anger. But then it brought healing to us all. It really did, in our case. In other cases, siding with the powerless, you find out the power of the powerful, and you can be in trouble. But, so often for me, I just want to punch back. I want to fight back. but we're not as powerful as we think. And when we ask for God's wisdom in the whole thing, we can become peace-loving and maybe weep, unyielding in terms of our faith in Christ and who he is for us and what his nature is, but peace-loving. Considerate. I mean, that's just basic. But do you see, I mean, is this what Christians are known for? This is what God's like. This is what his wisdom is like. If we were following his wisdom, we would be known as a considerate bunch of people. You know, thoughtful, thinking about what people need. I think about Jesus when he healed the man who I think was both blind and deaf, but I know he was deaf, and he took him away from noise so that when he first began to hear, he wouldn't be crowded around with noise. And he raised a girl from the dead. Remember that 12-year-old from the dead? And he says, give her something to eat. You know, Lazarus, take those things off him. Take all the cloths off him. Take care of the man. I'd be too busy going, whoa, did you see what I just did? I mean, wow. I wouldn't even think about what the person needed. I would just be gloating in my power. But when Jesus is working in my heart, you see, there's considerate.
Yeah.
Now, this is the S word. Submissive. Submission is, I don't take to it real well. Because so often I have seen submission as a complete denial of who I am. I used to feel like I could be a perfect Christian if I had a lobotomy. Ever get that feeling? I thought submission meant just to stop existing. No longings, no desires, no will of my own. I am what you need me to be. And, you know, I would spend some time doing that and then just want to be by myself to recover. And I looked rebellious in a way because I'm opinionated. But I didn't know that submission was to Jesus himself, who is the life giver. He's the life giver. Submitting to Jesus is submitting to the one whose compassion and mercy is new every morning to me. The one who loves me all the time and is always working things out for good. I mean, that's who he is. And was Jesus submissive? To his Father, yeah. To his Father. And this gift of submission is a wonderful thing. These are steps back in some ways into the joy of paradise. Because you're not going to find this kind of love, forgiveness, compassion, wisdom, purity. You're not going to find it anywhere else. And there's no other place where you're always, always loved like he is. You don't have to take a time and think, I hope Jesus isn't looking at me right now. You know? He's not the unviewed viewer. That goes back to, I forget who. A philosopher who decided God couldn't exist because then he'd be the unviewed viewer, and unviewed viewers are like, you know, stalkers. I thought, you know, really, this guy's like, that's it. That's the end of the argument. And I'm thinking, you got to be kidding me. Can you not imagine somebody who's looking at you and it's not a stalker? I mean, you see parents doing it all the time with their babies. They're just looking at them and loving them, you know? It's amazing to me, but the submission is to him, the lover of our soul, and it's a freedom. It's a wonderful thing, and when we're asking for God's wisdom, we are learning to do this to him. And then there will be a submission to other people in the sense that we're like listening to them, caring about what they think, and as much as possible, as much as is healthy, caring about the things they like and putting ourselves under to do them good. Does that make sense? But it's life submission. It's not death submission. And then full of mercy and good fruit. Aren't you glad Jesus is like this?
Yes.
Mercy and good fruit. And that's why he says, as the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Remain in my love. If you remain in me and my word remains in you, well, it talks about whatever you ask, you'll get. And I don't want to go into that because it's true, but it's a discussion. But he just talks by this is my Father glorified, that you bear much fruit, showing yourself to be my disciple. So if we just wake up in the morning and plan to do the day according to our own ambitions, our own envies and things like that, we're not going to bear fruit. But if we start the day realizing we are loved like this, known and loved like this, and that he's given us his Spirit, and these are the kinds of things that he wants to work in our life because that's his very nature. This is what he's like. It's better than getting your ambitions met by miles. Impartial. Try that one. It's very hard to be impartial, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay,
yes,
looking at
yes,
it.
is.
And the church doesn't have a history of being impartial. And of course, I know what happens when the church is partial to those with power and money, reputation. But Jesus is impartial, which is very good news for us, because if he was really partial, I'm not sure he'd choose us, would he? He's impartial. He's not looking for me to bring him something impressive, nor is he looking for the impressive things in anyone else. He was known as being impartial in his day, and that surprised people. We know that you are not a respecter of persons at all, and you see that in his healings and in the people who responded and the people that he spent time with. So impartiality, that's the beauty of Jesus. He loves you. People say, how can he love me? It's truth, because he's impartial. That's a good thing. We're always wanting to give him a good reason, Just see that? He's impartial. That's why he loves us. And as we get his Spirit, we become more and more impartial. Sincere. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. So I want to move on because we won't get a chance to mourn if I don't hurry. The point being at the end of this is that when we are poor in spirit, we will recognize that we are weary and burdened. Anybody here feeling weary, heavy laden, burdened, anything like that? Ever during the day?
Yes.
Yes. So what are you supposed to do?
Come to him.
Yeah, come to him. Just come as you are. That's the purpose of poverty of spirit. It brings you to him. It just brings you to him. I have so long spent my Christian life, even when I thought if I believed the gospel better, then I wouldn't be weary and heavy laden. It's not that. I come to Jesus because my ideas of how life is supposed to work, my wisdom, doesn't work. So I'll take his yoke upon me, which is certainly not a yoke of controlling the universe. Okay? It's not a yoke of fixing all the people in my life and fixing all the situations. That's usually the yoke that gets me in trouble. It's not the yoke of making sure that I'm all taken care of. It's the yoke of resting in his love as somebody who doesn't know in a way which way the ox should be plowing, and learn from him. And it's also learn of him. And what's Jesus like? This is my favorite. What's Jesus like?
Gentle and humble in heart.
Yeah, all the time. So we can come to him. Now, if we just want to use him for a better life, we'll stay frustrated and we won't get the benefit of his wisdom. But if we're willing to just let him give us the wisdom we don't have because we're impoverished, do you see, in terms of wisdom? we will find rest for our souls. And I like what he says, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And you'll see that as we in the Sermon on the Mount. It really is. It's our need to take care of ourselves because we don't believe he'll take care of us. It's our need to get it right and be memorable, be exceptional in some way, and control. I have trouble with boundaries. I'm learning better boundaries, but I get mad when people make me have to exercise boundaries. All these things scare me. And I'm just learning. I can take this to Jesus. He's humble, gentle. He's taking care of me. He will continue to take care of me. He loves me all the time, and he's with me all the time. Okay. Any questions on that? Because now we get to mourn. You ready to mourn? Okay. Look how long I just always go on and on. Okay. Oh, yeah. That's in there too, but I'm going to move on. Yeah, he is the bread of life. He's bread too. He's not just all right, I'm getting the new one in. Are we okay?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Now I picked out gray for mourning. Blessed are those who mourn. Why?
They will be comforted.
Yeah. What does it cost us to trust him that he will really comfort us? That he really will. So we're free to grieve. I don't know if you're one of the people that has trouble grieving, but I do. I do. My response is to pain. I picked out these pictures. I hope you like them. I have 3 that I thought of off the bat. One of my responses to pain is, it's only a flesh wound. Does anybody recognize this?
Yeah.
Monty Python, the Holy Grail. My kids love that. I have to take it in small doses. But this is one of the knights, and the other knight chops off his arms and his legs, and all the time he's saying, come on, come back here. It's only a flesh wound. It's only a flesh wound. It's just a flesh wound.
Yeah.
Very often, that's how I respond. It didn't really hurt. I'm fine. Fine. I'm fine. No problem. No problem, really. I'm fine. Jesus, God, I want you to know that too. I'm fine. I can handle this. I'm fine. I'm the one who discovers I'm not fine when I finally watch a movie where I can let my tears out. Anybody have that experience? Watch a sad movie and you're sobbing even Disney, you're sobbing way beyond the movie because you kept saying, I'm not sad, it's just a flesh wound.
Yeah.
Look at that. Now, I love babies, and so I didn't really want to have a baby looking like that, but I love the baby because the baby's acting all tough. Do you ever just act tough when you're not?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is an infant. What's he going to do? Can you imagine? You talking to me? I don't think so. But that's, we do. We sort of puff out our small mortal selves. And like, I don't think so. No way. Not this way. I don't think so. You talking to me? You want a piece of me? You know, that toughness instead of mourning. We act all tough and angry at the wrong people because we've never dealt with what we're mourning, you see. So we're mostly letting our anger fall out on safer people, which means the weaker people whom Jesus loves, you see. And then I love this one. This one's my favorite. I'm out of here. I'm out of here. Bye. I'm done. I'm done. And, of course, we all need to take a break. But I'm out of here just means I'm not dealing with you. I'm not dealing with what's going on here. And sometimes we have to set those kind of boundaries. I'm not saying that, but really, ultimately, we're saying that to God. I didn't sign up for this. I signed up for the part where you bring me to heaven. I didn't sign up for the part where you suffer. And that's actually where we're going. I just don't know what Bible people read when they think that Jesus came so we would never suffer. I can't fathom it. I can't imagine the holes that have to be in the pages, because he's pretty much promised it. In fact, he even puts it in Romans 8, which at first just feels so mean, doesn't it? You know, in Romans 8, there's therefore no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. You know, for the law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus has set you free from the law of sin and death. And, oh, nothing can separate you from his love. And, the Spirit cries out, Abba, Father, if indeed we suffer with him, so that we can share in his glory. Just white out. He didn't, he didn't. And, that's where I just temporarily, when I'm reading that verse, I'm out of here. But I'll come back for the rest of the good stuff, you see. No, the suffering's really good. It's good stuff. So we're going to go to the chief sufferer. And, actually, I probably should have had a blank place in there. You're familiar with Job. And the main thing we know about Job is that he was really a good man. He was a righteous man. And I'm not really sure why Christians get really nervous about that word or equate it with, going to church and, the three things you got to do. Isn't there 3 legs to a stool? You read the Bible, you witness, and you go to church or something? As if those are the things that make you righteous. And they're certainly important things to do. I'm not denying that. But what makes you righteous is to be a just person who cares about the needs of everybody in the community. You're always fair. You're always honest. And Job was somebody who, even you see as you read through the book, who took care. As long as he was powerful and wealthy, the widow was safe. The orphan was safe. The alien was safe. The poor were safe. The discouraged were safe because he encouraged them. You see, he was a very righteous man who feared God and was blameless. And when God talks about being blameless, he's not talking about ceremonial stuff, or the Pharisees would have been the best. He's talking about primarily not taking bribes, not being partial. It's the thing we just talked about with wisdom. Considerate, pure, honest, sincere. That's what Job was like. And when Job had everything taken away from him, because he was a righteous man, because he was authentic and sincere, he didn't call it a flesh wound. Did you notice? It can be really hard to understand the first part, and I think with the richness of the whole book, you can, realize that God wasn't just taking a dare or something. Satan is the accuser. He's the accuser, not Jesus, not God. And he's saying, Job serves you because you keep him rich and healthy and everything's working for him. Take it away and he won't. Now, why God did that is so much bigger than taking it. It wasn't because he took a dare. Because he loved Job. Important things needed to happen. And I honestly think one of the reasons that it happened was so I could read his words. So his people throughout the ages could read these words. And so when he's lost his children, he's lost his wealth, he has a wife who wants him to curse God and die, the one person God didn't take away, and he's lost his health. Depression, bad dreams, horrible nights that only lead to horrible days, boils. He's at the garbage dump, the garbage pile or whatever you call it, scraping his sores. I mean, this is not a good picture. And he has his friends who come to visit him, and they visit him for 7 days. They're wonderful. They're silent. And I don't know, maybe Job was silent for that 7 days too. But then Job speaks. And I love the boldness of Job. I love the boldness of Job. I've always thought that mourning was a wimpy thing to do, but it's not. Mourning is a courageous thing to do because it's being truthful. It's being honest about the pain. So after this, Job opened his mouth and cursed the day of his birth. Now, just imagine a Christian doing this, a Christian you've known, who's been a Christian leader, and things have gone wrong for this Christian, and the Christian says, may the day of my birth perish, and the night it was said a boy is born, that day, may it turn to darkness. May God above not care about it. May no light shine upon it. May darkness and deep shadow claim it once more, for it did not shut the doors of the womb on me to hide trouble from my eyes. What would you think if somebody was talking like that? Yeah, I need to buck up. Come on, Job. You got a witness here. It gets worse. Why is life given to those in misery, and life to the bitter of soul, to those who long for death that does not come, who search for it more than for hidden treasure, who are filled with gladness and rejoice when they reach the grave? What would you say no? You know, I am a survivor of a pretty extreme child abuse. And, you know, there's pieces of that stick with you your whole life. And there have been times, especially as the memories have returned. I was never suicidal. But, you know, I've longed for death. And not, I mean, there's the longing for death because you'll see God, but I really wanted to stop living in this world. What do you do when you have feelings that dark, and I don't mean dark as in evil, just that depressing? What happens when you talk about it? Well, let's see what Job's friends did. We have Eliphaz the Temanite, and it's worse than what I wrote down here, but he just starts. And I want you to picture it today. He hears Job talking like this. Why is life given to those who are in misery, for those who want to die now? Why? Why was I ever born? Do you see? And he says, if someone ventures a word with you, will you be impatient? Why would he think Job would be impatient? How does Job sound?
Well, he sounds like he has his mind made up.
It sounds like he's at the end of his tether.
Job does, yeah. And it's so funny because the Bible praises him. You remember the patience of Job. But his friends think that Job's impatient right now. Come on. Buck up and handle God's discipline. I even, when it talks about suffering in the Bible, it does use the word suffering. And it talks about it being grievous, painful, manifold sufferings. You know, the Bible doesn't lie about suffering. But we're a culture that's very much afraid of it. And I think Job's culture was too. So he says, but who can keep from speaking? Think how you have instructed many, how you have strengthened feeble hands. Your words have supported those who stumbled. You have strengthened faltering knees. But now trouble comes to you, and you are discouraged. It strikes you, and you are dismayed. Should not your piety be your confidence, and your blameless ways your hope? I think we'd change it. Should not your faith in God or faith in the gospel be your confidence? Now, what did Job do for other people who were in pain, who were feeble and stumbling?
Supported them, encouraged them, instructed them.
Yeah. He was very gracious to people who are suffering. And that qualified him to what? To be somebody who never suffers? Somebody who never stumbles? And when he does, to get rebuked? Yeah, we often do that to each other. And I don't think we know what we're doing, but neither did they. It's when suffering gets so bad that you've reached a place where there's no options. And there's a place you can reach where there's no door out. You're in it. That I think, at least for me, those have been the times when, I hate to say this because it can sound so spiritual, because it hurts like hell. It hurts like hell. It feels like hell. But it's not, because Jesus is there. But it's not like you can take that knowledge of who he is, put it in yourself, and be fine. That's not even what he wants. That's what I want. That's my selfish ambition, you see. I don't want to be someone that gets this said to her. So I'm going to be strong, right? But not Job. He goes on, call, if you will, but who will answer you? To which of the holy ones will you turn? Resentment kills a fool, and envy slays the simple. So what are they accusing him of now?
Being resentful and envying.
Yeah. The whole idea is the very fact that he's mourning is showing that he's become a fool. His faith wasn't real. I had a friend one time who had a child later. I had 3 sons, and about 8 years later, the shock of my life, I was pregnant again. She was pregnant again at the same time when her youngest child was about 13. So we were both pregnant and shocked. And she did everything she could with her older 2 to remember that time and then be ready for the baby. But when the baby came, she had postpartum depression. She wasn't planning on that. And I remember she called me one day, and see, I've always had postpartum elation. It's just God's gift to me. But she was in the press, and she goes, I don't know what to do. It's like all these people are coming to me saying, look at everything you have to be thankful for. Look at Jesus. Look at all he's done for you. All of these things. It's like I'm in the bottom of a well, a dried up well. I'm in the bottom of the pit down there, and they're out in the sunshine saying, why aren't you up here with us? And I remember saying to her, because I had been through some of these pit times, and I just said, it looks to me like Jesus has you in the pit right now. And he's there with you. This is where you are. This is who you are. This is where you are, and he's there with you. And she told me later that she just couldn't believe what a freedom that gave her. She wasn't sinning because she had postpartum depression. She wasn't sinning because she was grieving. But Christians will give you that one. And I give it to people if I'm not careful. Can you relate to that?
Yeah.
Oh, I love this one too. You ready for this one? But if it were I, listen, if somebody's suffering, don't ever even think that, all right? It's such a horrible thing to do. If it were I, I'd know what to do. I would appeal to God. I'd lay my cause before him. He performs wonders that cannot be fathomed, miracles that cannot be counted. He bestows rain on the earth and sends water upon the countryside. The lowly he sets on high, and those who mourn are lifted to safety.
And it sounds so spiritual.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I can see that I've already gone long. But the big deal here is the secret end of this. I'll read it to you. They go on. I mean, they say wonderful things about God. They say the most beautiful things about God you could ever imagine. I mean, poetically, beautifully. Do you ever just hear things that give you sort of a high? They could give you a God high. And
Well, it sounds,
go ahead.
sorry, just, just to the whatever. It sounds like it's straight out of the Psalms and the praise songs. It sows rain on the earth. That's what,
Right. But those songs are not speaking to somebody.
I know. So when you are in those doldrums and stuff, I guess you shouldn't be reading them Psalms.
No, I wouldn't. I would read the ones that affect you. And keep in mind, who's accusing you? It's not Jesus. It's not God. He knows what suffering's like. In fact, I'm going to go just to the end real quick, even though there's so many good things in here. It just breaks my heart. Read Job. It is so healing. Let's see. This is what I love. At the end of Job, you ready? When it's over and all these beautiful things have been spoken, Job repents because seeing God is beautiful. Oh, just read the way God describes the animals he made. I love when God talks about his creation. He's so excited about it. So much of his answer to Job is just being excited about what he's made. But after Job repented. After the Lord had said these things to Job, he said to Eliphaz the Temanite, I am angry with you and your two friends, because you have not spoken of me what is right, as my servant Job has. So do you understand? To think that someone who is mourning, who somebody's in pain, is just wrong for being there, angers God. Not condemnation, but because he's compassionate. He looks at the person suffering and he's saying, don't add to this. I'm with them. I'm down here. You see? And he makes them. He says, so now take 7 bulls and 7 rams. Go to my servant Job and sacrifice a burnt offering for yourselves. My servant Job will pray for you, and I will accept his prayer and not deal with you according to your folly. You have not spoken of me what is right, as my servant Job has. And then I want to just pop down, because this changed my life too. Psalm 69, 16 through 21. And we'll finish on this. This is a prayer to God of a person in anguish. And when you get to the end, you find out who this person is who's praying this prayer. Answer me, O Lord, out of the goodness of your love. In your great mercy, turn to me. Do not hide your face from your servant. Answer me quickly, for I am in trouble. Come near and rescue me. Redeem me because of my foes. You know how I'm scorned, disgraced, and shamed. All my enemies are before you. Scorn has broken my heart and has left me helpless. I looked for sympathy, but there was none. For comforters, but I found none. They put gall in my food and gave me vinegar for my thirst. So who's having all these emotions? Jesus himself. And we've got this idea somehow that if I'm really faithful, scorn won't bother me. It's a flesh wound. That when I look for sympathy and there isn't any, I should be fine. God will give it to me when I need it, no problem. I looked for comforters and found none. Do you see the pathos in that? And there's a couple things that I've learned in this. One is Jesus is a second Job. Do you see? He suffered. He looked for comforters and found none. He looked for sympathy. There was none. Scorn broke his heart. And I like it. The scorn made him helpless. Scorn, disgrace. I don't want to I don't want to make too much of it at this particular time, but Jesus was the suffering servant who said, don't take this cup from me. He never stopped believing his Father. But do you see, trusting in the beauty and the glory of his Father did not make him free from mourning. It made him mourn more often. And since he was a full man, we were made for relationships. We were made to be loved, to have good friends, to listen and to be listened to care and be cared for. We were made to be comforted. We were made to give sympathy, you see? And when we don't get these things, things go wrong with us. Do you see? But we live as if, no, I have faith in God. No problem. Doesn't bother me. All right, bring on the cross. I don't care. Bring it on. No sweat. That's not how he died. That's not how he died. The second thing that I've learned that somebody taught me, and it really does help, is to read each psalm as if Jesus was praying it. And you'd be surprised how often you will find places that fit. Obviously, there's some places that fit because he bore the sin of his enemies, but he is a God of justice. But quite a bit of it, you will rediscover that Jesus has come into this world to restore your heart, your humanity, your intimacy, your need to be loved, to fill you with love that makes grieving possible. I still fight grief. I fight grief. But when it comes and it spills out, I have begun to say, Jesus, I need your comfort. Please comfort me. Please comfort me. Because blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. And he has. And he keeps doing it. And I'll tell you, one of the ways is to continue to learn what his heart's like. Any questions?
I don't have a question, Sue. This is Deborah. But I do have a comment. You just made me think of the fact that when Jesus said to be his is to share in his sufferings, based on what you just, laid open for us in Job, sharing his sufferings is not only experiencing external persecution like he did, but also these internal grievous feelings.
Exactly.
The feeling of being in despair. So in a sense, when we go through those internal grieving times, we are also sharing in the suffering of Christ.
Yes, I believe so. I believe so. And we find, what Job had at the end is with God meeting him there, revealing himself. He just said, I've seen you now. I repent in dust and ash. I loathe my life, but he's not saying I want to die. He's saying, compared to your beauty, I loathe everything I am and have. You know what I'm saying? It's not denying mourning. It's the comfort. What could we possibly receive that could ever even come close to the very presence and love of God in our lives? I even had one experience. Do you guys have to go, or can I tell you one more story?
Oh, you tell us one more story.
Well, it comes from Job. It actually does come from Job. And I've told some of you before, I think it's in Job 39. But I grew up in a family where the abuse was extreme, and you never mentioned it, ever. And I mentioned it. And I just knew. I was a Christian by then, but I had mentioned it, and I had actually begun to realize it happened. And I was terrified. And it's probably not surprising that the churches that I'd gone to, I thought God was on the side of the ones that say submit, So I decided that God was mad at me. He was going to punish me because I was revealing the secret. And I decided I'd go to the part where God yells at Job, because that's what I thought he did. And I just get it over with. I honestly did. I said, okay, God, I'm going to read this. You can yell at me, get it over with, and then tomorrow will be better. And I did. So I started reading, where were you, and all that stuff, and consider this and consider that. And I'm like, yeah, hit me again. And got to the ostrich. And it described the ostrich as someone who lays her eggs in the sand and is not mindful of them. It doesn't even care that the horse and rider will come and trample the eggs. That her labor's in vain. She doesn't, she has no heart for this child. In fact, when she runs away, nobody can catch up with her, not even the horse. And I was amazed. I was absolutely dumbfounded because that's my mother. That's the ostrich. And Jesus was saying, Sue, I cried then. I sobbed, but I sobbed in good arms. Because I just said to him, I never thought you understood.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought you cared. But here you are saying, so this is why you're hurting. This is why right now you're confused and think I'm going to hurt you. And see, that's God. He doesn't live in lies. He doesn't live in secrets. He lives in the truth. And that's when I began to understand. It's still hard.
Mm-hmm.
But he cares. Cast your cares on me, Sue, because I care. You know a fraction of what's breaking your heart right now. And I'll give you what you can handle today, maybe. I'll give you, but I'll be tending to you. I'll be comforting you. I'll be loving you in the process and healing you. I really shouldn't. I mean, I'm not like wonderful, but I do have the life of God in my soul, and I have a lot of joy in my heart, and I've gained some wisdom over the years, and nobody thinks I grew up the way I did. I really shouldn't be alive. But he's a healer. I'm lower than I was, but better. You know what I mean? It's a better place to not call everything a flesh wound and not act angry or think everything's about anger or to disappear. So that's my story. You should read about the ostrich and you'll understand the beauty of what he gave me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll look forward to next week.
Yes. We might be mourning for a while, but thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.